Dava Kunjavihare
Chariot Statara Sada Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Nitya-lila Pravistaram Vishnupad Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakota Vaishnava Vrindi Ki Jai, Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Pramse Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai, Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Chamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Sri Mathura Dham Ki Jai, Sri Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Jamuna Mai Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Sri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai, Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so what is that? 1-7?
1:17:17.
1:17. I think I read the wrong verse this morning. Chapter. All right. Text text Canto 1, Chapter 17, Text 17. Okay, I revised the wrong verse, but no matter. Okay, let me just... I think we can do without that. Whoever's in charge of setting this up, please make a proper arrangement. Not everybody can sit on the Vyasa anymore, and we don't want to have calamities like this. Is that going to fit there? I think it's not. It's too far away. No, I mean, it's got to be here. That's... All right. We'll get through as best we can. Okay, text 17. The chapter's called Punishment and Reward of Kali. Dharma uvāca etad pāṇḍaveyānāṁ yuktam ārtābhayaṁ vacaḥ yeṣāṁ guṇa-gaṇaiḥ kṛṣṇo dautya-ādau bhagavān kṛtaḥ dharma uvāca etad pāṇḍaveyānāṁ yuktam ārtābhayaṁ vacaḥ yeṣāṁ guṇa-gaṇaiḥ kṛṣṇo dautya-ādau bhagavān kṛtaḥ dharma uvāca etad pāṇḍaveyānāṁ yuktam ārtābhayaṁ vacaḥ yeṣāṁ guṇa-gaṇaiḥ kṛṣṇo dautya-ādau bhagavān kṛtaḥ. Ladies, okay. Dharma uvāca, the personality of religion said. Etat, all these. Vacaḥ, by you. Pāṇḍaveyānāṁ, of those who are in the Pāṇḍava's dynasty. Yuktam, just befitting. Arjuna, the sufferer. ārtābhayaṁ, freedom from all fear. Vacaḥ, speeches. yeṣāṁ, those. guṇa-gaṇaiḥ, by the qualifications. Krishna, even Lord Kṛṣṇa. Dautya-ādau, the duty of a messenger, etc. Bhagavān, the personality of Godhead. kṛtaḥ, performed. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. The personality of religion said, these words just spoken by you befit a person of the Pāṇḍava dynasty, captivated by the devotional qualities of the Pāṇḍavas Even Lord Kṛṣṇa, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, performed duties as a messenger. Please repeat. The Personality of Godhead of religion said, these words just spoken by you befit a person of the Pāṇḍava dynasty, captivated by devotional qualities of the Pāṇḍavas. Even Lord Kṛṣṇa, the Personality of Godhead, performed duties as a messenger. Purport. The assurances and challenges made by Mahārāja Parīkṣit are never exaggerations of his real power. The Mahārāja said that even the denizens of heaven could not escape his stringent government if they were violators of religious principles. He was not falsely proud, for a devotee of the Lord is equally as powerful as the Lord, or sometimes more powerful by his grace. And any promise made by a devotee, though it may be ordinarily very difficult to fulfill, is properly executed by the grace of the Lord. The Pāṇḍavas, by their unalloyed devotional service and full surrender to the Lord, made it possible for the Lord to become a chariot driver or sometimes their letter messenger. Such duties, executed by the Lord for his devotee, are always very pleasing to the Lord, because the Lord wants to render service to his unalloyed devotee, whose life has no other engagement than to serve the Lord with full love and devotion. Mahārāja Parīkṣit, the grandson of Arjuna, the celebrated friendly servitor of the Lord, was a pure devotee of the Lord like his grandfather, and therefore the Lord was always with him, even from the time when he was helplessly lying in the womb of his mother and was attacked by the blazing Brahmastra weapon of Ashvatthama. A devotee is always under the protection of the Lord, and therefore the assurance of protection by Mahārāja Parīkṣit could never be without meaning. The personality of religion accepted this fact and thus thanked the king for his being true to his exalted position. The Personality of Godhead said, get used to saying that phrase. The Personality of religion said, these words just spoken by you befit a person of the Pāṇḍava dynasty, captivated by the devotional qualities of the Pāṇḍavas. Even Lord Kṛṣṇa, the Personality of Godhead, performed duties as a messenger. Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So this is an interesting part of the Bhagavatam. Let me just change my glasses. This question is sometimes asked, that if Krishna is God, then why is he driving Arjuna's chariot? I actually had a personal experience of this. I'd read it in Prabhupada's books, of course. There's somewhere where Prabhupada makes that hypothetical question. If Krishna is the Supreme Lord, then how come he's the driver, charioteer? They're in the lower ranks of the Varnashram system. But Krishna's taking this apparently lower position. So why? Why is that going on? So I had one time an experience of my mother. She lives in England. She's 99 now. In those days she was a bit younger. But she somehow or another started watching the Mahārāja TV series. I'd come to spend a week with her before coming back to India, and I think on a Saturday afternoon I wasn't doing much, so I flicked on the TV, as you do. And when it came on, I was surprised to see the Mahārāja, was, that long series that they did some years back. So I sat down and I was watching it. And then my mother came into the room and she said, "Oh, the Mahārāja's on. I'd forgotten about that. I've been watching it every week." So I was quite surprised, to say the least. So we got talking, and because she was open, there was no barriers, philosophical or otherwise, to having a proper conversation with her. She was interested in the Mahārāja for some reason or another. It attracted her. And so she asked this question, and I was able to explain the difference between Krishna as the Supreme Lord and Krishna as the charioteer of Arjuna. And we gradually talked about the different rasas, the intermingling, the friendly exchanges, Krishna's mood towards his devotees, like that. So the whole thing. So she was very happy to hear that explanation. That though Krishna, she asked me, she said, why, if Krishna is the Supreme Lord, why is he driving Arjuna's chariot? I mean, she's completely mundane, but even she understood something unusual there. So I explained everything to her, so she was very satisfied with that. So this is Krishna's position. You can't kind of pin him down to one role. Krishna is everything. He's the master of all the senses and the mind, the intellect, etc. And any position or any activity that he seeks to perform, he does for the pleasure of his devotees. So it may be as a child, baby Krishna. It may be as a young boy dancing in the forest with the gopis. It may be with Arjuna in Dwarka and Mathura fighting on the chariot. So Krishna can accept any role as long as it increases the pleasure that he derives from being with his devotees. So the Pandavas are, of course, very favorite, in one sense favorite, but they're always with Krishna, somehow or another, especially Arjuna. So how is that he can accept so many different roles? So the idea is that Satchidananda, Krishna is eternal, Krishna is full of knowledge, and ultimately, therefore, he's full of bliss. And that's what life is about. Life's not, meant for trial and tribulation, unless it brings one to the point of increasing one's affection and love for the Supreme Lord. And as one reciprocates with him, he reciprocates back. As Prabhupada used to say, if you take one step toward Krishna, he takes 10 steps towards you. So this is our idea, that ultimately life is for living in a happy way. A newspaper reporter once asked Srila Prabhupada, what is the purpose of life? And Prabhupada told him, to enjoy. So that's our situation. Generally speaking, because we're mixing with the modes of material nature, we don't enjoy life very much. Or if we do enjoy it, it's only for a short period of time. None of us can stay here forever, as they say. And even if you could, still there's so many difficulties. Let's say forever means up to the point of the beginning and the end of the creation of the universe. So if one wants to live up to that extent still, Krishna says, Brahma bhuvanal loka punaravatino Arjuna, you're still going to suffer. As long as we identify with this material body, with these material elements, with this planet, the cosmos, it goes on and on, unlimitedly. But as long as we identify with that, then there's going to be trial and tribulation. There's going to be problems. Just now we're seeing in Europe. So they're having so many problems. Why? Because one puffed up rascal thinks he has the right to kill anyone and everyone in order to further his own ambitions. This is the materialists. They think that they have the right to do whatever they like. They don't believe in God. They don't believe that there's someone above them who's there to punish them if they do the wrong things. A theist, he knows as soon as you accept as the Supreme Lord, then there's certain things you can do and there's certain things you can't do. That's the position of an ordinary living being. We are controlled, and we're controlled personally and impersonally. We're controlled by the three modes of material nature. There's so many different types of control. There's so many different kinds of witnesses to our activities. People think that if they're in a secret, hidden place, nobody knows what they're thinking and what they're doing, so they feel free to do whatever they like. But that's not true. According to the Bhagavatam, the sun, the moon, the directions, the stars, the air, so many different elements, Krishna is infused or is in those elements, and he sees everything. He sees all the living beings, what they're doing, what they're thinking, and he runs this material universe according to his design in reciprocation to the wants or requests of the ordinary living beings. So in that way then, a theist is always aware of Krishna's presence. That's what it means to be a devotee. They're always aware at every moment Krishna's presence, our relationship with him, what he wants me to do, what he doesn't want me to do. That's all there. We should never think that we're alone. Yeah, that's a mistake. But the atheists, they think that they're free to do whatever they like. There's no God in control. Nobody's in charge. Whoever grabs, sufficient amount of land or resources, he becomes in control automatically. So the karmis, they're very anxious to get more and more wealth, to somehow or another increase their stature by adding to the list of opulences that they think that they possess. But at the same time as they're doing that, they fail to see that time is creeping up on them and will take everything away from them within an instant, no matter how powerful, no matter how big a person they think they are. It's all very, very insignificant, very small time. So like Mr. Putin, he declared war on his neighbors. They were living very peacefully. Everybody was reasonably content with what was going on, but this man's heart is burning with envy. Yeah, he's burning with desire. He wants to have what he thought was once his. Previously, before 1990, the USSR. So that was a conglomeration of different countries, but all controlled from Russia, from the Kremlin. So as long as everybody behaves themselves, does whatever the Kremlin tells them to do, then they're allowed to live fairly peacefully. But after 1990, of course, the whole thing crumbled. I was reading an interview one time with this Mikhail Gorbachev. He was the one who actually oversaw the disintegration of the USSR. So in Russia they hate him because he demolished their kingdom. Outside of Russia, everybody was very happy. Oh, now we won't be oppressed by the Russians anymore. But after 20, 30 years, here we are, back in the same scenario, another demon, looking at everything and wondering, why isn't this mine? Why am I not in control of this? I have the resources, I want more. So he fights. They create some pretext, they go out, they start fighting, and so many innocent people are killed. Just like he's saying here. So many unnecessary anguish and strife in human society just because of one or two individuals who want to show that they're as good as God. But what is his godhood? In a few years he's going to be dead. In fact, maybe even less than that, because they say he's just had an operation for cancer. So he has no power to control the cancer. So whatever happens, it's beyond his control. He can't reverse it. There's no medicine that he can put in there which will stop him from getting, the effects of the cancer. Or there's no activity that he can do whereby he can go to somebody like some doctor. There's an example Prabhupada always uses. In Allahabad, he had a friend, businessman, So this man got some serious disease, so the doctors told him, you're going to die very shortly. So he was very upset, and he pleaded with the doctors, just give me 4 years more. If I have 4 years, then I can do all the things that I set out to do. I can look after my arrangements for my family and friends or whatever. So just give me 4 more years. No, sir, you have to go. Out, boot. That's the position. Doesn't matter how many years you think that you deserve. Let's see what your activities are, and then we'll see what you deserve. So those who are pious, those who are religious, generally speaking, they at least have a better position than those who are not. They're in the material world, but they behave in such a way that within certain restrictions they can get a little taste of happiness. People want to be happy, and if you're a good person, then it's generally accepted that, yeah, you'll get some happiness. But even if that's a fact, it doesn't last for very long. Time I am, Krishna says. Yeah, time is the motivator. Actually, one example of time, that time is the expression of the will of the Supreme Lord in relationship to the conditioned souls. So in that way we can see time is like a regulator. Yeah. Whatever we're doing, wherever we live, whether it's on this planet, whether it's on the heavenly planets, whether it's on Brahmaloka, you have to leave. Time will push us on. So time is all conquering. But that time, therefore, we say is Krishna. Prabhupada used to say sometimes that even an atheist has to bow down before God, yeah, in his form of time. Even if you don't believe that there's a God, still you must leave this body at some point, travel on, travel on, travel on, going all over around the universe. For what aim? Well, you're not going to become happy, but that's actually the goal. So what constitutes real happiness? I read a BTG article just before I joined Krishna Consciousness. I was in Australia, and I got a Back to Godhead magazine on the street there. This was in 1971. So I started reading it. At first I couldn't figure out what anything in it was talking about. But gradually I knew it was an important, something about it. I knew it was important, and then I would need it at some point. So I kept it very carefully. And then every now and again I would take it out from my suitcase and I'd read another portion of it. So there was one article there written by my godbrother Upendra Prabhu. Upendra was Prabhupada's personal servant. He happened to be one of the first devotees that I met in Australia when I joined, because he and a devotee called Bali Mahadan, they actually came to Australia, the first devotees, and got the whole thing going. So I knew, of course at the time when I read the article I didn't know who he was, but I found out later on. But anyway, he wrote a very nice article that true happiness must be eternal. And then he drafted this nice article that if you want to be happy, don't try to become happy using material, temporary manifestations. Indriyani paraniyaho, indriyabhya param manaha, manasastu para buddhi, yo buddhe paratastu saha. There's a hierarchy of elements, beginning with elements, ordinary elements. Then it comes to the senses, then the mind, then the intellect. So in that way, there's an arrangement which is made for each living being. They're given a body according to their desire, and they're allowed a certain amount of time and a certain amount of facility to enjoy whatever they've been given. And then at another point, it'll be all over and finished. So if you want to be happy, your happiness has to be derived from a source beyond time. As long as you're in this material world and you're trying to become happy, like Hiranyakashipu, he had control of the whole universe practically. course, not the highest realms. They're not allowed. Even the demigods or personalities like Hiranyakashipu, they're not allowed up into the higher reaches of the universe. They have no access to that. That's Lord Brahma. Sometimes they get a little peek. But in Janaloka, Tapaloka, Mahaloka, the residents there are all extremely advanced transcendentalists, and they spend their time doing yajna to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When the whole universe submerges, as it periodically does, those planets remain the same. They're not disturbed by what's going on the lower level, but even they are not here permanently. At some point or another, when it comes to the time of Lord Brahma quitting his body, then those sages and saints, they also leave this world and go back to the transcendental world with him. So if we want to become happy, we have to know what real happiness is and where it's to be attained, or how it's to be attained and where from. So in Krishna consciousness, that's all condensed into one mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Everything that's there, that's of any value, is contained within the Maha Mantra, because the mantra is Krishna himself. Krishna owns everything. Bhaktaram Jagnatapasam Sabaloka Maheshwaram Suridam Sababhutanam Riddesha Arjuna Tishtati. That Krishna says very clearly, that this material world, I'm in control of it. Sabaloka Maheshwaram. I'm the controller of all the planets in this material world, cosmos. And because I own everything, it's therefore I am the enjoyer of it. You can't enjoy something that's not yours. If you have something that you actually own, which is actually your possession, then that means that you can control it, and if you can control it, you can derive happiness from it. If you're not in charge of anything, if you don't own anything, then you're not going to be happy. There's nothing you can aspire for, if you like, which will actually bring about the desired goal to become happy. But Krishna says, Gyatvam Shantim Richati. If you want to be happy, the first level of happiness is simply to become peaceful. Real happiness will develop from that. But if you're not peaceful, you'll never be happy. Everybody's, as we're saying, just like in Europe now, everybody's becoming scared. So even the countries where there's no fighting going on, right now it's confined to Ukraine. But in Poland, they've just had 3 million people in 6 weeks descend upon their nation because they're all in fear. They're all afraid that they're going to be bombed off the face of the earth. And they're probably right. This is the situation. So they're all running. So periodically you see this. There's people from Africa running to Europe. Yeah, they risk their lives on boats, flimsy little boats. They go across the ocean. They try to land, even if it's illegal. They try to land in some wealthy country or another, because they think that if we get away from our country, which is impoverished, if we can just get to France or Belgium or Portugal or Germany, or we can just get to somewhere where there's some material opulence, then we'll be happy. So they're risking their lives to leave one place to go to another. But the place that they're going to is the same place that the Ukrainians are going to now, or the Poles. They're all headed, in different directions, literally millions of them. So do we expect to find any happiness from that? No way. So this is all due to ignorance. People don't know who they are. They don't know what this material world is. They don't know how they should act or not act. Prabhupada sometimes would quote that verse. What is it? They don't know what is to be done and what is not to be done. Anybody know that verse, the Sanskrit? They're always unclean, those who are demons. Asura, Yura or Pandit. What can anybody? Huh? No, it's God. It's gone out of my brain. Anyway, it's something Prabhupada used to quote quite often. I was once on the balcony with him and Tamal Krishna Maharaj on the Lotus building there, and he'd just taken his lunch, and he sat down on a chair. Myself and Tamal Krishna were sitting on the ground at his feet, and Prabhupada pointed to his cup, and he told me, just pass me the cup. So in my eagerness to serve him, I reached out too quickly. I caught the rim of the glass with the palm of my hand, and it started to fall over. So I caught it. So when I caught it, the tip of my finger touched the water. And I thought, oh no, what am I to do now? If I go and, throw this water out, because it's touched my fingernails, so it's moochy. So if I throw it out, that means Prabhupada will have to wait for me to go and get fresh water and come back. If I offer it to him straight away, then he may not like it because, my fingernail's been in it. So anyway, I took the second option. Instead of making him wait, I thought I'll give him the water now. Maybe he won't say anything. Prabhupada was watching me. He just shook his head and said, "You're a malacha and a yavan." And then he quoted this verse. Oh boy, what is it? Jinana vidurasura. Those who are asuras, they do not know what is to be done or what is not to be done. Na saucham na pichacharo. There's no cleanliness that's found in them, no good behavior. So Prabhupada quoted that verse at me. He said, go and get some clean water. So even in the smallest degree, there's some way of doing things or some ways of not doing things. But anyway, to get back to what I was saying, people are in ignorance. They don't know what this world is. They don't know how to use the resources that are given to them. They don't know how to use their own bodies, what to speak about the bodies of others. And so you see these situations coming up every few years. In Europe, I think about the 17th or 18th century, they had what was called the 100 Years' War. France and England. They were always fighting for hundreds of years. So one war went on continuously, more or less, for over 100 years. Still they didn't resolve anything. So like that, people are always agitated. They're always in distress. You get settled into one place, then something else happens in another place. Immediately you're punished. Yeah, you get caught up in the whole thing, even if you're not directly responsible. So I asked Prabhupada one time about what happens, with people's karma. Say one person is a bad person. So somehow or another, other people get drawn into it, even though they're not actually guilty of anything. So Prabhupada gave the example. He said it's just like if you're in a house, the house catches fire, there's people in the floors above you. So if the house catches fire, you may not have been directly in contact with that, but because you're in the same house, then naturally you'll also suffer. Even if immediately it's not apparent, why you're getting burnt with the rest of them. So we have to somehow or another understand what the true nature of the universe is, that it's actually always controlled by a higher force. It's always in flux. Nothing remains the same. And that if you want real happiness, you have to look beyond, these material elements that make up these bodies and the mind and the intellect, etc. We have to somehow or another come to the point of real happiness, which means it must be eternal. Then from that point of eternality, when you understand Sat, you become peaceful. That's the platform at which peace actually comes in, that gyatvam shantim richyati. Yeah, when you understand who I am, that I'm the controller, I'm the enjoyer, then Krishna says, shantim, that you become peaceful. But that's not the end of it, that's just the beginning of it. First of all, you become peaceful, then by practice, doing the right thing, recognizing the Supreme Lord's authority and control, gradually you become more and more enlightened, chit, so you become aware of everything. That gives increased happiness, not just that, I'm not this body, I'm not part of this material world. That's peace, that's okay. But beyond that, we want happiness. So first there's some peaceful condition has to come about. Then after that, if you work in the proper way, according to the directions of the Supreme Lord, then gradually your understanding and knowledge will increase. When your knowledge is increasing, then there's no further agitation. It's like these people in Europe, because they have no knowledge, they don't know where to run. They run here, run there, do this, do that, nothing works. They get bombed into smithereens by their so-called enemies. So to be happy, first peaceful, give up the fighting, give up the false acquisition of this material world, and then gradually you become more and more aware of Krishna's presence in everything and your relationship with him. That is the beginning of happiness, when you know these things. And then when you know the actual situation, ultimately it culminates in ananda, bliss, ananda. You become anandamayo bhyasa. That's the natural state of being for any living entity. So when we realize these stages of existence, sat, chit, ananda, then we can actually be happy. But it won't come by pretending that we're God. It won't come by thinking that we can lord it over other living beings and do whatever we like and there'll be no retribution. When a person, I told this story before, Prabhupada once told me that he was talking to a policeman in Calcutta. So as they were chatting, one or two men came around the corner. As soon as they saw the policeman, they ran. So Prabhupada was laughing. He said, why did they do that? I mean, it's not like that they were doing anything wrong. He said, no, but these men are regular thieves. So as soon as they see this badge or this uniform, they're afraid and they run, just in case. I was in Shielder station once, Shielder railway station. So I happened to walk past one of the offices, and there was a little guy there. He was not dressed very nicely. He was there with a policeman. So the policeman had a cane, and this man, he was standing there, and the policeman was tapping underneath his hand to make him put his hand out. And then when he put his hand out, then whack, he hit him with the cane. And then he was crying, and he had to the policeman kept making him, put his hand out and whack, do it. He did it 4 or 5 times. So I thought, this is the material world. You got a little bit of relief. Oh, that example that Prabhupada gives about the Middle Ages, they had what was called a dunking stool. It was a pole with there was a chair on one, there was an armature, and you could move that onto dry land and then move it round, and it would be above the water. So then whoever they were trying to correct or punish, they put him in the chair, and then they'd swing it out over the water and then dip him in. So he'd go underwater, can't breathe, can't get free, and just before he drowns, they bring him back up. When he comes back, and then as soon as he starts breathing again, all right, now down again. This is the material world. Yeah, we're getting whacked at every moment. Yeah, we're getting the cane. So certainly Prabhupada said with these wars, because that's on a small scale, but a big war, First World War, Second World War, Prabhupada said, the demons like Churchill, Hitler, they think that they're in control. They think they can do whatever they like. But Prabhupada said, actually, what's really happening, he said, just like at my school. So when I went to school, if there were any boys that were misbehaving, then the teacher would bring them out to the front. They'd have to stand facing each other, and then they'd have to grab hold of each other's ears. So I grab your ears, you grab my ears, and then when the teacher ordered, all right, now pull, and they'd have to pull. So they're pulling and pulling, and the teacher wouldn't let them stop. So the more they pulled, the more they hurt the other guy. The more he got hurt, then the more he pulled and you got hurt. So they're both pulling and crying and pulling and crying. And then when the teacher says, all right, now stop, then they can go back and sit down. So he said, in the same way, material nature or Maya, she's ordering, all right, now take one Churchill, one Hitler, one Stalin, all right, hold on to your ears, pull. And they have to pull. They have no choice. They have to keep on pulling until Maya allows them to stop. So this is the material world. It's a place of, let's say it's not a suitable place for any gentleman. There's one time here in the long building, not the long building, the Lotus building, some lady came, Yogini Shakti Ma. She had typical Mayavadi, long robe, long streaming hair. She had 3 men with her that were followers. So she's supposed to be some Yogini Ma or Shakti Yogini Ma. So they come to invite Prabhupada to a peace conference. So that peace conference, they're going to have it in Calcutta. And the address was there they had a small pamphlet. It gave the address. It was some flat, some apartment in Calcutta. So they asked Prabhupada, they were all happy and light. The Mayavadis, they smile at anything. So they asked Srila Prabhupada, please come and attend our peace conference. So Prabhupada just shook his head. He said, there will never be any peace. He said, this is all an illusion. He said, if I tell you, if you go into a stool house and you wave around some incense, will that make it a better place to live? I mean, you do your business and get out. So when Prabhupada told them that, I mean, they went into complete shock that anybody could speak even about the stool house. And one of the men, he actually became so disturbed, he was shaking like a leaf. He became so insulted that Prabhupada had insulted his guru by telling her that you're better off, getting out, don't stay in the stool house. So they got up and walked off. They went back to Calcutta, and Prabhupada just laughed and laughed. So this is the problem, that they think that they can be peaceful in this material world. It's not possible. So they have he said, they have their one flat in Calcutta, whereas we're expanding all around the world. So we don't need this. Anyway, so that's the situation. Don't expect anything happy to occur, especially in Europe at this time. There's always something going on. Yeah. First World War, when that went on, 1914 to 1918, then everybody thought, this is it. It was such a horrible experience because it was the first time that they really brought big armaments into the war fields. That was during that period when they invented the tank. So these tanks were like ferocious machines that everybody was afraid of. They'd blow you into pieces. So they brought then the airplane also. That was the first war where they started using airplanes and dropping bombs. So that was 4 years. 50 million people died. After that, 20 years later, they called it the war to end all wars. And 20 years later, they're at it again. And instead of whoever it was in charge in the First World War, now Hitler and Stalin and Churchill, they were having a go. So again, millions of people blown to pieces. And then after that, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, this war, there's wars going on all over the planet at every moment. It's not that there's just a war in Ukraine right now. There's a war going on, there's many wars, big or small scale, going on in Africa, South America, all these places. It's simply continuous disturbance. So if we want to get to the point of real happiness, we have to practice in such a way that we give up this warring mentality and live peacefully, depend upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and if we do that, then it's guaranteed, that's Krishna's guarantee, that you will become completely, eternally happy. Okay, so does anybody have any questions? So, Jamasami Prabhu.
The verse that you were searching for is 16:7. Pravittim cha nivrittim cha janana vidhur asura nasocham napi chacharo nasatyam teshu vidyate. Those who are demoniac do not know what is to be done and what is not to be done. Neither cleanliness nor proper behavior nor truth is found in them. Did Prabhupada say something? He quoted that? I think you were telling a Prabhupada story.
Yeah, well, I tipped over his glass. I had a glass of Prabhupada's glass, it had water in it. Oh, so right. He asked me to pass it up to him, and I moved forward too quickly. I was overly eager. And I just caught it from tipping right over, but in catching it, I just got it just right on the rim of the glass with my fingernail. And Prabhupada was watching, and I could see he was waiting to see what I was going to do. So obviously I did the wrong thing. And as soon as I offered him the water anyway, then he just shook his head. It was simply a malecha. And then he quoted that verse.
There's one other verse that I was just kind of relearning from Lord Rishabdev that also speaks about how to achieve real happiness. Nayam deho bhajan iloke kastan kaman arate vidbujam ye tapodivyam putaka gena satvam shudya dyajmad brahmasokyam tunantam. So, my dear boys, of all the living entities who have accepted material bodies in this world, one who has been awarded this human form should not work hard day and night for sense gratification, which is available to dogs and hogs that eat stool. One should engage in penance and austerity to achieve the divine position of devotional service. By such activity, one's heart is purified, and when one attains this position, he attains eternal blissful life, which is transcendental to material happiness and which continues forever. That's the real happiness.
Is that from?
That's 551, 5.5.1.
Yeah, that
Rishabdev.
Teachings of Rishabdev, teachings of Prahlad Maharaj. I think those were the two Prabhupada's favorite sections of the Bhagavatam. He was always quoting Prahlad Maharaj, and he was always quoting Rishabdev as well. 551, you see many conversations on that. So yeah. Actually, at one time I went into Prabhupada's room in Vrindavan. He was just sitting quietly chanting. And, he, you know, as he always did, he started preaching, even though I was the only one in the room. And he quoted from Prahlad Maharaj. And it just struck me at that moment that Prabhupada was like Prahlad Maharaj, that the mood that Prabhupada had was exactly the mood of Prahlad Maharaj. Yeah, when you read his prayers, what was it?
Naivo Dvijay Paraduratya Vaitaranyas?
Yeah.
That one?
Yeah, there's many. But anyway, the mood of Prahlāda Maharaj, that he wanted the good of all others, not himself. Yeah, he wanted to do good for, like with his father, do him some good. He's a demon, but do him some good. He said that mood of Prahlāda Maharaj, that was Prabhupada's contemplation. He was always thinking about how to, help the ordinary living beings and get free from Maya. Yes, sir.
Said that Arjuna and the Pāṇḍavas are always with Krishna, and I heard Prabhupada say that every time Lord Chaitanya appears, he has eternal associates that take birth and then perform with his pastimes and then die.
Right.
So how do these? I heard Arjuna was Ramananda Roy, and how does when these great devotees, how are they free from birth and death if they keep on being born and then die?
When Krishna comes to perform his pastimes in Bhoma Vrindavan and Mathura and Dwarka, so when he comes with his entourage. So they're simultaneously in the spiritual world and the material world. So they manifest sometimes, and sometimes they're not, at least to our worldly vision. So with, let's say, the story of Baulasva, I think, and who was that other king? Shrutadev? I just forget his name now. Anyway, Prabhupada, Krishna was invited to go to the house of two different devotees. So he decided that he didn't have enough time to do them both, one after the other. So he expanded himself, and with each it was King Baulasva and Shrutadev, I think. So Krishna expanded himself, but not just himself. He went to both houses simultaneously. Each one thought that Krishna is with me, is not with the other one. And Krishna had his entourage with him, and there's all the sages and saints, Shamik, Muni, this Muni, that Muni. And the same Munis are in both places at once. So they have the same powers as Krishna. So similarly, when you read about the winding up of Krishna's pastimes, then so many of the devotees, they don't go back to Goloka Vrindavan, they go back to being demigods in this material world, because they were invited by Krishna. When he comes, he brings all his entourage, and that entourage can be Nityasiddha devotees, Ladini Shakti, like many of the gopis, or it could actually be demigods, which have been deputed now to take birth at the same time as Krishna, so that he can engage in his pastimes. And when their pastimes are wound up, they go back to the heavenly planets and continue on with their functions, like Yamaraj. Slightly different, but same thing. Yamaraj is here and he's not there. I mean, it's inconceivable. That's the whole point. Does that answer your question? Yes. We have to finish. It's 9:05. All right. Was there one last question?
Thank you, Prabhu, for the class. Not really a question, an observation that the kings of old, when they engaged in warfare, were right there in the front of the battlefield leading their army. But today's politicians, they sit pretty safe in their fortresses and send excuse me, millions and millions of young people to be slaughtered on the battlefield. Yeah. So this is something I just was...
Yeah, well, it's a point that Prabhupada also made very often, that the modern so-called leaders, they're not kshatriyas, they're cowards, they're hiding behind innocent people, Just like with Russia and Ukraine right now, the Russians are bombing different cities which have no connection with any kind of, they don't produce any materials for warfare or anything, just regular citizens just living there so-called peacefully. And now the Russian army is deliberately flattening every city that they come to. They're just wiping it out, including all the civilians. Now that they've already set up a war criminals court. So they'll get a few young men, 20, 21 years old, who've gone out into the war field, they've been captured. They'll charge them for being war criminals, but the real criminals are in the Kremlin or Kyiv or wherever they may be. So it's a very horrible situation for everybody. All right.
Thank you.
I mean, they're not these men are not Kshatriyas by a long stroke. They're murderers, actually. And they'll get what they deserve. Putin's already got cancer. They think he's got Parkinson's disease. So how long is he going to last? There's already talk about some of the generals in the Kremlin are getting together, trying to figure out how they're going to get rid of him. They want him out because he's going, He's not crazy, he's just demonic. He knows perfectly well what he's doing. He's not a madman, he's not a psychopath. He's got his aim set on recapturing all the land that the USSR used to be in control of. He wants that control, but it hasn't worked out the way that he wanted it to. He thought that he was going to drive in to Ukraine and conquer the place in 3 days. That was the plan. Now we're 7, 8, 9 weeks, and they're still fighting like cats and dogs. So, anyway, what can be done? If you don't die with a bomb, or you get knocked down by a car, or you get cancer, but somehow or another we're all going to go the same way. Let's hope we get it. For us, at least, we don't want to take birth again in the material world. Okay, we'll finish there. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.